In this video, I'm going to explore a range of responses to the Section A questions that appeared in the AQA English Language Paper 2 in June 2017. The exam paper and the source materials can be downloaded from the address that appears in the description section under the video. I'll also put the source materials up on the screen so that you can pause the video and read them without needing to print them out. For clarity, these are non-fiction texts and include an article by Stuart Heritage, which appeared in the Guardian newspaper in 2016 entitled, "How Can My Son Be a Year Old Already?" and an extract from a Victorian newspaper article of the 1800s entitled, "Boy Lost." Please note that these are not exhaustive answers. I haven't said absolutely everything that there is to say, nor are they exemplars. Apart from question 1, rather than there being one correct answer, there are any number of answers which, with justification from the text, are as valid as one another. Presenting an exemplar answer runs the risk of effectively dismissing as wrong other interpretations or ideas that you may have had simply by not considering them. As a consequence, there is much more analysis here than you would ever have time to include under exam conditions. What you will find here, therefore, is a range of observations and analysis which could be said, rather than which should be said, in response to the questions. My goal is really to provide you with examples of the level of response, rather than the quantity of a response, which is necessary to earn you the highest grades. So to start, here are the source materials if you don't already have them printed out. Don't forget to read the introductory section at the top of the articles, as they will help you put what you read into context. So, question 1. Read again the first part of Source A from lines 1 to 17. Choose 4 statements below which are true. Shade the circles in the boxes of the ones that you think are true. Choose a maximum of 4 statements. If you make an error, cross out the whole box. If you change your mind and require a statement that has been crossed out, then draw a circle around the box. A. The writer's son has just had his 2nd birthday. B. It took a while for the writer to feel close to his son after he was born. C. The writer has not slept very well over the last year. D. It takes a long time for the boy to eat his porridge. E. The writer thinks that his son has grown quickly. F. The boy has not yet learned to walk. G. The writer's son knows how to switch off the television. H. The writer finds it easy to grasp the idea of his son getting older. This question is worth 4 marks. This is a warm-up question, and getting full marks on it is extremely achievable as long as you read the relevant sections of the text closely to pick up on any subtleties in the language that can affect the meaning. It's a good idea to put a bracket around the section of text indicated to focus your reading. A. The writer's son has just had his 2nd birthday. If we have a look at the text, we can see that the writer says in the very first sentence, "My son turned 1 last week," which means that he has just had his 1st birthday. So this statement is false. B. It took a while for the writer to feel close to his son after he was born. If we look at line 3, he says, "From the instant he was born, it's felt as if my son has always been part of this family." Feeling as though someone has always been a part of your family communicates that you feel close to them, and this happened from the instant he was born. So this statement is false. C. the writer has not slept very well over the last year. In line 7, the writer says, I simply mean that I haven't slept for a year. So this statement is true. D. It takes a long time for the boy to eat his porridge. In lines 10 to 12, the writer says, entire galaxies have been born and thrived and withered and died in the time it's taken him to eat a mouthful of porridge. As most galaxies are over 10 billion years old, it's clear that the writer is using hyperbole to describe how his son takes a long time to eat his porridge. So this statement is true. E. The writer thinks that his son has grown quickly. In lines 13 to 15, the writer says, first he was born, and then I blinked, and now in his place is a little boy who can walk and has teeth and knows how to switch off the television at precisely the most important moment of anything I ever try to watch. The way in which he goes from a baby to a little boy as the writer blinked, suggesting a very short period of time, communicates his belief that his son has grown up quickly. So this statement is true. F. The boy has not yet learned to walk. If we look at lines 13 to 14, we can see that his son is a little boy who can walk. So this statement is false. G. The writer's son knows how to switch off the television. If we look at lines 14 to 15, it says, and knows how to switch off the television at precisely the most important moment of anything I ever try to watch. So this statement is true. H. The writer finds it easy to grasp the idea of his son getting older. The writer's comment, it's honestly quite hard to grasp, in line 17, shows that this statement is false. Now on to question 2. You need to refer to source A and source B for this question. The ways the boys spend their time playing as young children is different. Use details from both sources to write a summary of the different activities the boy in source A enjoys and the boy in source B enjoyed when he was young. There are 8 marks on offer here, which means that you've got about 10 minutes to answer the question. The 2 boys are of different ages and therefore at a different stage of maturity, which will affect the types of activity they engage in. The range of activities the toddler in source A engages in is much more limited than those of the young boy in source B. The toddler is all about exploring the capabilities of his own body as he shows off in a bid to get attention from others, such as switching off the television, barking gibberish in the middle of the room, and running up to people and waiting for them to twang his lips like a ruler on a table. Due to his more advanced age, the young boy in source B is much less dependent on others for his entertainment. He still seeks attention, but his more advanced language skills than those of the toddler allow him to ask questions instead of just making unintelligible noises. He also requires things to play with which are much more stimulating and is able to keep himself occupied with purpose-built toys and musical instruments, such as drums and tin trumpets. He clearly has lots of different toys with which to engage in imaginative and adventurous, if noisy and boisterous play, such as wooden sheep and cattle, pop guns, bows and arrows, whips, tops and go-karts, as well as materials such as paper and paints with which to do crafts. Now on to question 3. You now need to refer only to source A from lines 18 to 28. How does the writer use language to describe his son? This question is worth 12 marks. It's a good idea to put a bracket around the section of text indicated to focus your reading. Stuart Heritage uses a range of language techniques to vividly describe his experiences of his son's transformation over the first year of his life. He first describes him as an infant in purely physical terms. the metaphor of a sleepy ball creating an image of a tranquil, content and innocent curled up newborn who is still in a fetal position. The way in which Heritage uses the adjective scrunched up, which is usually used to describe something delicate like paper, to describe his flesh, implies not only that the baby's features are as yet unformed and unrecognisable, but also that he is fragile. As he develops, however, he goes from a passive infant to an active toddler, and Heritage realises that he is determinedly his own person. In other words, that he is a strong and willful personality who makes his presence in the family known. Heritage describes him using words that usually have negative connotations, i.e. he is giddy and silly, he's a show-off. But these are meant affectionately, as Heritage injects them with positivity, clearly revelling in his son's exuberance and desire to get everyone's attention. His use of the onomatopoeic twang not only evokes the noise that his son likes to hear as adults play with his lips, but the informality of the word also suggests the simple joy that his son gets from it. Heritage appears in awe of his son's energy, as even when the little boy gets tired and barks gibberish, seemingly in a tantrum, he throws his entire body into it like he's trying to shove the noise up a hill. The synesthesia of this simile, where sound is given a tactile, physical presence, evokes the image of a child who is still at the stage of development, where self-control and understanding of the world around him are very limited, and where emotions and physical responses cannot be separated. Heritage is, however, clearly very proud of his son's development as he describes him as blasting ahead as far as he can. The verb blasting ahead evokes the idea of a rocket powerfully speeding away as he leaves milestone after milestone in his wake. Now on to question 4. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. Compare how the writers convey their different perspectives and feelings about their children growing up. In your answer, you could compare their different perspectives and feelings. Compare the methods the writers use to convey their different perspectives and feelings. Support your response with references to both texts. There are some very obvious differences here which will affect the writers' relative perspectives and how they choose to express these, not least to do with their gender, in combination with the time periods in which they are writing and the accepted child-rearing practices of the time. Stuart Heritage, the writer of Source A, is writing from the perspective of a 21st century male who is able to take a very active role in his son's upbringing in partnership with his wife, and who feels that his son has always been a part of this family. This is very unlike the way in which Victorian children were brought up. The mother would be solely in charge of the children, while the father would have a very hands-off role. And there's a sense that the female writer of Source B suffers her emotional pain in silence. Note that she does not mention the child's father once, in relation either to their son or to how she copes with her feelings of loss. And she writes exclusively in the first person singular, i.e., I have a very pleasant house and company. The writers are also looking back from different stages of their child's development, which affects their perspectives. Heritage is just reviewing the very first year of his son's existence, and is still a central and active figure in his life, with much of his child's development still to look forward to. While the Victorian mother feels that her role has been somewhat sidelined as she looks back now that her child is a manly figure taller than her, who spends little time at home, and is no longer as dependent upon her as he once was. Heritage explores how being a parent can affect the perception of the passing of time, while the Victorian mother reflects on how the passing of time can affect our perception of being a parent. While the tone of Heritage's article is both humorous and affectionate as he describes, using a metaphor, how whole years have passed in some of the afternoons I've spent with him lately, to convey how time can seem to grind to a halt when looking after a child, the Victorian mother's writing is tinged with a tone of sadness and regret as she describes how what she once perceived as onerous responsibilities she now understands to have been happiness. Both reflect on the negative aspects of parenting. The Victorian mother uses a list and repetition to convey the monotony of constantly clearing up the mess her child makes, as she used to obliterate mud stains, fruit stains, treacle stains, and paints of all colours. But she also uses anaphora with the phrase "I want" repeated 4 times to emphasise her regret. Now he is grown, she is desperate to have all that back if it means that she could also have her child once more. By contrast, Heritage uses humour to convey his frustration at the length of time that his son takes to do things like eating. Entire galaxies have been born and thrived and withered and died in the time it's taken him to eat a mouthful of porridge. Heritage's use of hyperbole, in that galaxies are on average over 10 billion years old, and polysyndeton, to emphasise the different stages of a galaxy's lifespan, amusingly convey to the reader the subjective passing of time. Both writers consider the way in which they feel their children have changed both physically and cognitively beyond recognition. Heritage, with the benefit of a modern technology that allows frequent and casual snapshots to be taken, is able to observe his son's development in real time, as he remarks that photos of him taken last week seem like a different boy. By contrast, the Victorian mother, when her son is in front of her, confesses that she is rather unwilling to own or acknowledge the manly figure as her son, as he has changed so much without her realising it. While Heritage seems incredulous and not a little proud at the speed with which his son is changing, his use of the verb blasting ahead suggesting the power and energy of a rocket, the Victorian mother's words convey her sense of shock and alienation from her son, as she seems to have only really noticed him changing after a number of years have passed. Although both writers convey their perception of the passing of time bringing a sense of loss, i.e. Heritage talks of time slipping beyond your grasp, and the Victorian mother describes her little boy as being lost, they have different attitudes towards this. Although they both acknowledge that time cannot be reversed and that change is inevitable, they differ in their acceptance of it and the language they use to communicate this. Heritage is upbeat and pragmatic as he says, "But it's okay, you can't hoard time, you just have to make the most of what you have." And, "He's never going to stop changing, and I don't want him to." The Victorian mother, on the other hand, wants to turn the clock back, even though she knows that this is impossible. Unlike Heritage, she doesn't want her son to change. "I wish he was still a little boy in a long white nightgown, lying in his crib." She feels that she has lost her child forever. The way in which she describes how he has changed using the verb disappeared suggests that she feels this literally rather than metaphorically, and is highlighted by the way in which the first paragraph of the article reads as though her son just went missing one day along with the family pet. He was accompanied by a small black dog. She also feels that she has lost the opportunity to create a stronger bond with him. "I think if I had been more to my little boy, I would now be more to my grown-up one." Note how she talks of her little boy and her grown-up one almost as though they are two separate individuals, and how she uses hypothetical constructions such as "if I had been," "I would now," to communicate her regret. While Heritage is aware of the nature of time passing and that You just have to make the most of what you have. The Victorian mother has realised this too late. Unfortunately, this will inevitably be self-defeating. She is spending all of her time regretting what she feels she has lost, while not making the most of what she still has. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.